Let's review The Invitation, written and directed by Jessica M. Thompson. Let's get into it.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Hey everybody, what's up? KillJoy Jake here, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. The horror movie we're discussing today is The Invitation from one Jessica M. Thompson, talking about this brand new film that just came out this weekend. Before we get into it, if you guys can like this video and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that. Now let's talk a little bit about the film before we review it. The Invitation is an American supernatural horror film written and directed by Jessica M. Thompson and co-written by Blair Butler. The film stars Natalie Emmanuel and Thomas Doherty and is inspired by the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. The film's plot synopsis reads, after the death of her mother and having no other known relatives, Evie, played by Natalie Emmanuel, takes a DNA test and discovers a long-lost cousin she never knew she had. Invited by her newfound family to a lavish wedding in their English countryside, she's at first seduced by the sexy aristocrat host, but is soon thrust into a nightmare of survival as she uncovers twisted secrets in her family's history and the unsettling intentions behind their sinful generosity. Getting into kind of a non-spoiler review here, this film was alright. It was aight, as the kids are saying these days. But let me tell you, this Welch's grape juice I'm drinking, this is phenomenal. This movie is kind of like Get Out and Ready or Not had a vampire baby, and it was heavily neglected. The PG-13 rating really didn't help this film either. I feel like the horror is turned all the way down to 0 on like the knob scale. There is barely anything scary that happens in this movie, which is really unfortunate. Some positives I have for the film, though, is that our two main characters, Evie and Walter, are portrayed fantastically by their respective actor or actress, and I really liked those characters. I think they were well written, and the romance between those two characters is also pretty good. It's like, not bad. If romance is your thing, this is the movie for you, but this movie was advertised to us as a gothic vampire thriller, and it's not really that. Sure, it kind of mildly turns into that at the end of the film here, but besides that, I mean, this is pretty much a romance movie. This is like Twilight all over again, man. This movie's really unbalanced and has a bunch of characters that do nothing for the plot. There is just a lot of characters for the sake of having a lot of characters. I was honestly more interested in this side plot with all of the maids that was going on, which honestly only takes up about like 10 minutes of screen time. That was the most interesting thing about the whole movie. I can't really get into it without spoiling anything, but that was like the coolest aspect of it, and like I said, it's only at like 10 minutes of screen time. Even though I think that objectively this is a bad movie, I'm never bored watching it. And it's not like it's campy or like goofy, it's so bad it's good. It's not like one of those movies. I don't think this is a good movie, but I'm never bored watching it. There's always something at least somewhat entertaining happening on screen for me to be invested in, and I will give this movie that. But besides that, it does kind of just feel like another PG-13 horror movie. Getting into some spoilers though, I want to start off with some of the better aspects of this movie. I think there are some genuinely super awkward sequences throughout this film. You have the character of Victoria sucking on Evie's finger at one point when she starts like bleeding. She gets cut by someone doing her nails, and she just starts sucking on her finger. You probably saw that in the trailer, but it's pretty effective here. I mean, it's pretty like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on here? Can you imagine if your homie just got done like eating like a bag of Cheetos or something, and you're just like, oh dude, I got you, man. Ooh, I did not wash my hands ever since I've been at the movie theater. I'm gonna go wash my hands real quick and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and hopefully I don't have any of those diseases going around right now. But I think the absolute best scene in this entire movie is when you get fucking Walter biting into some girl's leg, and then he's just kind of like admiring her feet, and he says the line, "The feet are so underrated." I was like the only person to laugh at that, and I'm kind of shocked. Like, I feel like most people will miss that line, but I don't know. That was just so funny to me. Vampires with a foot fetish. I never thought I would see that in my life. Like I said earlier, the PG-13 rating really does not help this film. The sequences where something scary does happen, which is like the maid characters, that's interesting. Okay, cool. But then there's only like 3 scenes of that in the entire movie, and they are short. They are painfully short, and you never see a kill on screen for the most part in this entire movie. And it's very romance focused. Like I said, there's a good like 30-40 minutes of this 104-minute long movie, which, my God, this should have been 90 minutes and no longer. 40 minutes of that is just romance between like your central 2 characters, and it's just like, it's to the point where it's almost not even a horror movie. It just kind of has a gothic aesthetic inspired by the novel Dracula. Like, what? And the ending is atrocious. I mean, like I said earlier, there's so many characters that are kind of just there to either help Evie or be random antagonists at some point in this film. There are two characters who are introduced more than halfway through the film that serve no purpose to the plot and are kind of just there for filler at the end for someone for Evie to fight randomly. And then also one of the other sisters just like kills her. So it's, I don't know, it's just like it's so pointless to have these characters in the movie. They don't do anything to further the plot. They're just filler. Like, it is painfully obvious too. I would personally rather have seen a movie that was more focused on the maids. One of the most interesting aspects of this film is that right from the get-go, like when you get to this mansion, you see all of these maids and they have like numbers on their like their outfits and their attire and all that. Like there's like a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5, and they all like walk out of this van like they're cattle to the slaughter or something. Like, it's kind of like disturbing how they portray the maids in this movie. And I was like, man, that's the coolest aspect of all of this, is that whole idea of like these aristocrats treating these maids horribly and then finding out that there's more things to these horrible aristocrats than meets the eye. Evie's character is a server back in New York City too, so I don't know why they didn't go the route of like, oh, maybe she gets like some job offer over in England, like in the middle of nowhere, and she's like a maid. She's going to accommodate these aristocrats and make a bunch of money. Conceptually, that would have been so much more interesting if Evie had gotten like a position there and she goes over like across the pond and all that. Like she says, she's at this like house and she's serving these aristocrats, and as the movie progresses, you see all of the maids get eaten by like the vampires in the house, and then Evie starts to notice like there are less and less maids. What is going on? And she also, like, you could still have the relationship between her and Walter. Walter maybe takes an interest in her because she's like a little snarky, you know, she's a certain type of character. I really liked Evie. She's well written. And then maybe Walter takes an interest in her. She's like, oh, well, you're pretty interesting for a maid. I can already see the dialogue. That would have been just such a way more interesting movie. Towards the end of the movie too, maybe Evie's the last maid alive and she gets invited to the table. Maybe she gets like, oh, come sit with us, come eat food and break bread with us and all that. Walter's all aristocratic and like over the top, and then like you find that's where you get the reveal that the whole family is a bunch of vampires. That would have been just way cooler to me conceptually, and it wouldn't be so romance focused like how this movie was, I think, because it's impossible not to draw connections to Twilight, and you just can't make a romance vampire movie anymore. Like, you just can't after Twilight. It's just gonna bomb. And I kind of want to go in detail about the ending a little more too, because you have this end, like the very last denouement scene after all the action has happened. It cuts to 2 weeks later, and instead of going back to New York City where like you would assume like, oh, she goes and meets with her friend or something, which by the way, the friend character does not serve any purpose in this film whatsoever. Instead, they're still in England and her friend are hunting down the rest of the people involved with everything that happened, and it's just like, it's so unbelievably forced and ridiculous. I don't know why they went this route. And immediately when this film starts, you get those Get Out vibes because you got like the two characters, they're friends, you know, they're hanging out, they're kind of talking, they're bullshitting at work and all that. And when you actually get to the mansion and Evie is like messaging her and all that, I was really thinking, oh, okay, she's going to pick up that something is wrong eventually. Evie's not going to be at her phone, and you're going to get a scene like maybe where like Walter is texting and being like, oh, I'm fine, you know, pretending to be Evie, something along those lines. The character then comes and tries to help out. But instead, the friend character is rendered completely useless. A quick fix here would be, instead of having like all these random characters just start helping Evie for absolutely no reason that I can figure out about this movie, you could have just had the friend character stop by and be the monkey wrench that's thrown into all of this that really fucks up the vampire's plan. Maybe they weren't expecting one of her friends to come and help, and that would have been so much more interesting and a much more, you know, cohesive story, I think. Is it a trope that has been done to death in many movies, including, yes, Get Out? Yeah, of course it is, but it works, and that's why it's been done to death, because your other option here is doing this, where there's just like 100 characters that will randomly start helping our protagonist for no reason except for the idea of furthering the plot. I hate being so harsh on movies, but this is just not a good script. Like, and that is typically your, that's your ground, that's your layout. That is the bottom cement of a gigantic house that is your movie, and if you cannot have that good foundation, the whole thing's just gonna crumble. I'm gonna be a little nice though and give The Invitation a 4 out of 10. I think, like I said, I'm never bored with this movie. There is always something either super ridiculous happening on screen or something at least mildly entertaining happening. I'm never bored with this movie, and that really saves bad movies, I think. What did you guys think about The Invitation though? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this brand new review video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content in the future. Next week, I'll be reviewing Barbarian, which I'm even more excited for. I cannot wait for that film. Thank you all again for watching, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all. You know, I'm kind of sick of drinking blood. This just kind of tastes like liquid iron. Ugh.